All right guys, today we're talking about prong collars. We get a lot of questions about what training collar to use. A prong collar can be a great training tool. So we've got 3 options out here. The reason why you might want to select a prong collar is because a lot of times it can provide a more effective correction for a dog once you achieve the accountability phase of our training progression. In addition, you won't have to give as hard of a leash correction with a prong collar because these prongs are going to essentially tighten down on the dog's neck, creating a little bit of unpleasantness. And so once the dog realizes that, if you follow our proper training progression, they're going to want to relieve that unpleasantness by doing what they know they're supposed to be doing. And so you'll be using less of a correction with the prong collar. Can be a great option in a lot of scenarios. If you want to talk more about prong collars, let us know. We can do a podcast on it. But in this video, the purpose is to show you a couple options, show you how you would fit them to dogs, all right? So we got a large prong collar here. Right, usually you're going to have large, medium, or small prong collar options. This is a large prong collar. The reason why you would use a large prong collar is not because your dog's bigger, but because you want less of a prong collar correction. So that's why you would use a large prong collar, okay? And then once you fit this on your dog, you've got 2 options here of rings you're going to be using to attach the leash to. So this one is known as the live ring, the ring that comes away from the prong collar, if that makes sense. So once you tighten this one comes away from the prong collar. This ring right here, known as the dead ring, stays with it, if that kind of makes sense. So this is your live ring. You'll be attaching your leash there for the maximum pressure that you can achieve from the prong collar. You can also attach your leash to the dead ring if you'd like to, right, instead of the live ring. That's going to create less pressure, but still a little bit more than just a flat collar. Or you could attach both rings together to your leash like this to minimize overall pressure applied by the prong collar. And you can use that for a variety of scenarios. Again, if you want to talk more about that, shoot us a comment below and we'll talk about it in a podcast for you guys to get the entire debrief on those with. But that's a large prong collar. All right, again, it's going to minimize overall correction. It's not based on your dog's size like some people would think. It's actually based on the amount of correction. So the distance between the links here is actually creating less of a correction for your dog. So this could be used in a wide variety of circumstances, but that's what we think when we think large prong collar. We got a medium one here, obviously pretty much the same thing, just smaller. Notice the difference in the rings here, they're kind of tangled up, but no, yeah, they are definitely tangled up, but just note that this ring on this one looks a little bit different. That's your live ring. Notice it's not a ring, it's like this little fancy, attachment point to half of a ring. So that looks a little bit different, but it's completely normal for prong collars. Again, you could use this by itself. You could use a dead ring if you wanted to, or you could attach both together to minimize overall correction. The way you use the rings is the same across all 3 types of prong collars, all right? Medium prong collar, going to be used for about medium correction ability. It's going to have more of a correction than a large prong collar, less of a correction than a small prong collar. All right, so this is a small one. Notice color differences, not really a big deal. This is just plain stainless steel. This is a black coated stainless steel. Doesn't really matter. It's just a preference or a cosmetic thing, okay? But again, small prong collar. This is used to provide maximum correction ability through the prong collar, all right? So it's not because your dog's small. Obviously for a Yorkie, you wouldn't be putting this on a Yorkie. It's way too big, way too heavy. You would be using one of these on a Yorkie, but you could also be using these on a Doberman, on a German Shepherd, on a Cane Corso. You don't use a big prong collar because they're big dogs. You would use this if you need to apply more of a correction to the dog depending on what you're doing, okay? So again, once you put this on the dog, and we'll talk about fitment here in a second, but once you put this on the dog, you got the live ring, you got the dead ring, and then you can use both together as a combination to reduce overall pressure on the dog's neck, depending on what you're doing. All right, so again, these are your options. This one is my preferred prong collar because I can apply more pressure if I need to. I can apply less pressure, right? If I'm teaching a dog to walk on a leash, one of your options, right? It's not our preferred option, but one of your options are you could properly fit this to your dog, and as soon as your dog walks ahead of you and they gently pull into it, right, they're going to feel that pressure, they're going to turn, right? If we've done our leash pressure work, they're going to turn, look at us, come towards us, we mark and reward that. That can be a way to build up loose leash movement with your dog, so just keep that in mind, all right? So now we're gonna talk about fitment. Again, as we go through this video, if you guys are enjoying the content, hit that like button, shoot us a comment below on some things that you need more information on, okay? So fitment on this, the way you want to fit a prong collar, whether it be a large prong collar, medium or small, is you want basically the entire collar to rest upon the dog's skin, all right? You don't want it digging into the dog's skin. You don't want it hanging loose like this around the dog's neck. You want it fitted to that dog's neck, and we're going to demonstrate that on a dog here in a second, okay? So again, doesn't matter if it's large, medium, small. You want these prongs gently resting on the neck, and once you attach the leash to the ring, the live ring, for example, as soon as there's any tension, you want that gentle pressure applied. So that's the overall purpose. If you're using a remote collar with the dog, you're going to put this above the remote collar on the dog's neck, all right? Bane, come here. So you're going to put this above the remote, Bane, come here. You're gonna put this above the remote collar on the dog's neck, all right? So we got Bane here, we got a fur saver, we got a remote collar, right? Now we're gonna put the prong collar on him just to demonstrate what that fitment's gonna look like. This is already fitted to him. With the prong collar, you can add links, you can take away links, all right? But notice how it's not hanging below his neck at all, right? Come here, Bane. Good boy. So notice how it's not hanging below his neck at all. It's just gently resting on his skin, all right? And if I were to put a leash on him and attach it to the live ring and apply any pressure at all, it's gonna immediately apply pressure to his neck, right? Which is what we're looking for. Let's go to a large prong collar here just so you can see that. All right, so let's go back to the small one. So again, whenever I put this on, I'm gonna put the rings on the side of the neck that I'm gonna be operating the leash with. So once I put this on, it's gonna go above the remote collar because I'm using a remote collar with him below his ears. I just attach it right there. Notice how it's just gently resting on his skin. It's not hanging off, right? Of course I can pull it off a little bit, but it's not hanging, right? It's also not just digging into him, just being on him, good boy, right? But if I did put a leash on him and apply any pressure at all, right? Notice how I apply gentle pressure. It goes ahead and it slightly applies that pressure to him. That's what we want with the small prong collar. All right, this is why I like the small prong collar. You can use it to a very precise level. All right, now let's look at a large prong collar. A little bit easier to see here. Same way you put it on, above the remote collar if you're using that. Put the links together. Notice, same thing, gently resting on his neck. Okay, not hanging, not too tight. I can gently pull it off. But if I were to put a leash on here and apply pressure, it would be applied. Although because it's a large prong collar, right, you're gonna get less of a application of the correction, if that kind of makes sense to you guys, all right? So that's kind of how we're gonna fit large and small prong collars, all right? With that being said, we're still gonna go through our training progression. We're still gonna do leash pressure with it. We're gonna do all of our pressure work just like we would normally using the prong collar if needed, okay? With that being said, you can take links apart from these, add links to it depending on your dog's neck. All right, also with that being said, there's a lot of different types of prong collars out there. Some have clips, some have snaps on them. You want one that's like this, right? This is a Herm Springer prong collar. They do not pay us to say that. That's the only brand we're gonna use, right? There's no clips, there's no snaps, nothing like that. You have to literally take the prongs apart to get it around your dog's neck, and then you have to put them back together. You want that with a prong collar, all right? So make sure that when you're selecting a prong collar that you do that, because the other prong collars with the snaps and clips, those are, number one, they could fail very easily, but also it's gonna degrade your corrective ability because it takes away some linkage by adding in those extra buckles and clips and things like that, okay? Last point I'm gonna make, then we're gonna wrap this up. When you put this on a dog, there is a possibility that if you're working, training, whatever, that some of these prongs, especially with a small prong collar, become warped. All right, so with that being said, there is a possibility at some point when you're using it, it could unbuckle itself from your dog's neck while your dog's wearing it. So we always recommend that if you're using a prong collar, have two collars on. Either our standard fur saver collar that we use, that's gonna be below the prong collar, or like a dominant dog type collar, which we can show in a different video, where you put that underneath the prong collar. So the prong collar would be sitting at the top of your dog's neck, for example. You might have a remote collar Then you might have a dominant dog collar under here, and you just basically are going to attach your live ring of your prong collar, live ring of your secondary collar, whether that be dominant dog collar, first saver collar, whatever. You attach those together with your leash. That way, if your prong collar fails, you've still got your leash on your dog as needed, okay? So hope that makes sense. Again, if you guys have a question, if you'd like to see more information on this, we can do a full podcast episode on this if you guys like, Canine Revolution Radio. But if you guys have any more questions, let us know. Hopefully this answered some of your questions. And until next time, out.